Thanks a whole heck of a bunch for clicking on this video. Can you let me know what made you decide to click on this video? I decided to review this book. This is a very good book, but I have a couple of issues that I want to also teach everybody that might read this book. So I'm a fitness professional. I started this YouTube channel to promote my graphic memoir of how I used my health and fitness knowledge to stop my mother with mild dementia from forgetting me. I've said that so many times, it feels like, right? So I read this book because Chris Piasek, you can look him up on YouTube. He's really funny. He's an artist. He's very good. He mentioned it as what he read. So I only have a few issues. This is a really very good book for anybody, but it's not just for artists. It's really for anybody sitting at a desk, anybody that's doing everything. So I wanted to share with you some stories that would highlight the positives of this book. I did my internship with the Fremont Police Department way back in '91 in Fremont, California, and I always remember this one dispatcher. She was typing and had the whole headset and doing all of her work all day, and then she would go home and she would knit. So my example is you can't do the same bodily motions, same body mechanics. Your body can't do it. And I would hazard a guess that there's probably not a study on this, but if you can only do the exact same movement for maybe 6 hours total for a day, then you have to do cross training, same with everything else when it comes to all athletes, right? So think about that. Maybe even if you hold the hand, your pencil, pen, all that stuff a little bit differently, it would change your body mechanics. Another thing that she mentioned a lot of times in this book is she kept on mentioning that your low back is overstretched. And I would like to disagree. It's not overstretched. The problem is that your low back is weak. So every muscle has a joint action. So for instance, your bicep is responsible for elbow flexion. So if you kept your bicep like this for long periods of time, it would have a hard time. It would be weak. So it's not overstretched, it's weak. So with our low back and with our whole spine, people slump so much. So if you look at some of my other videos, I've been starting to do what I call posture links. And I also have the best back strengthening advice video to teach you a little bit more than what I'm going to mention here today. But you have to extend your spine. So flexion means you're closing the angle of a joint. Extension means you're opening the angle of a joint. And hyperextension means you go so far. Your low back does hyperextend. It goes past flexion, but you're not supposed to let it. You're not supposed to let your elbows, your neck, and your knees and your low back, those four things. So elbows, knees, low back, and neck hyperextend. There's lots of information you can look up. So if you've ever had to paint, when you're hyperextending your neck for long periods of time, your neck hurts, right? So same thing with your low back when you're hyperextending. And there's some jazz dancing that requires you to hyperextend your back, right? So the biggest problem is that you're slumping. So you have to extend your spine for long periods of time, and then it will get your low back strong. That's what your low back is meant to do. So when you're weakening it by always rounding your spine, that's why your low back always hurts. So spend time, even when you're not drawing or not doing anything on the computer, to really extend your spine. So that's part of my posture links that I created with all my freshman college students and all my phys ed classes, because they would come to class and they couldn't sit up straight at all. They'd be sitting on the ground like this, holding their low back. I call it, don't use your arms as a kickstand, don't grab your shins. Sit up straight and work your core. I also call it core training through daily activities. So that's really important. So every single time you're drawing, figure out a way to make sure that your spine is extended. So I have a little tripod pillow that I put on my lap a lot of times when I'm reading to keep my spine straight. I also have a kickboard on my futon to keep my spine straight. I also have one of those triangular pillows, so if I do lay down watching TV, my spine is still straight. That's what you're trying to do, keep your spine straight. The other issue I have with this book, which, like I said, generally it's great. It's great information for you to do. You have to cross-train, change what you're doing. But she mentions in here about arnica. So as I mentioned, I took care of my mother with mild dementia. And arnica is a homeopathic supplement that helps with inflammation. It's advertised as just for muscle pain, because whenever you have pain, you should always look for ways to reduce your inflammation. So all the typical foods that everybody eats. So we have tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplant are considered the nightshade family, which contribute to inflammation. So I gave my mother arnica a lot when she was difficult because something in her body was inflamed, making her irritable. So I gave that to her and it worked. And I take it myself. Whenever I have some kind of a stomach ache, sometimes even just a stomach ache is inflammation. So I take that. Also, there's lots of other herbs, but what I also mentioned is dandelion root capsules are really good. I gave dandelion root capsules. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing. I'm just sharing with you, like they say, seek out your doctor and look for yourself. Research. I gave my mother dandelion root capsules, and that stopped her leg edema in her legs when she was starting to die from heart failure. So research. Don't just assume. So the reason why in this book she mentions that arnica is $20 is because arnica is not subsidized by the government and by Big Pharma. So you think that it costs more money, but you can't just take one or two capsules. It isn't like Tylenol, those kind of things. You know what I mean? You might have to take more. And I did give my mother quite a few of the dandelion root capsules, but it worked. There's no side effects for herbs. There's also a part of me that thinks I'm not going to start taking vitamins anymore because in Dr. Colin Campbell's book, Whole Nutrition, he mentions there are no studies proving that our body assimilates vitamins. So why take all the vitamins? And doctors still prescribe them all the time. So take herbs. That just makes more sense to me nowadays, to take the herbs. And if you have a specific issue, find out what herbs have a higher percentage of that vitamin. So I wanted to share that. So arnica is great. I love arnica. Thanks for listening. I hope that you might subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot of information that I want to share. I'm almost finished with my book. I'm going to publish it pretty soon. It's called Mom Remembers Me, about how I use my knowledge to stop my mother from forgetting me, and it worked. So thanks a lot for listening. Thanks.